Ram Shaivanottamam Evim Sarasvatim Vyasam Sojayamudhiraya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the right means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Srinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Vidyantastohi Vadrani Vidunoti Sukritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, Supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, plants his desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to bear messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly read and chanted. Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
Bhakti Bhavatamistiki
Bhakti Bhavatamistiki.
By regular attendance at classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's Canto 2, Chapter 5, entitled The Cause of All Causes, and text 25. Tamasad Api Bhutadir Tamasad Api Bhutadir Vikurvanad Abhun Nabha Vikurvanad Abhun Nabha. It's a difficult one in a way. Tasya Matra Guna Shabdo Tasya Matra Guna Shabdo Lingam Yad Drashti Drishyayo Lingam Yad Drashti Drishyayo Tamasad Api Bhutadir Vikurvanad Abhun Nabha Tasya Matra Guna Shabdo Lingam Yad Drashti Drishyayo Tamasad Api Bhutadir Vikurvanad Abhun Nabha Tasya Matra Guna Shabdo Lingam Yad Drashti Drishyayo. Two or three?
I think it was 3.
Okay, let's check.
Tamasad Api Bhutadir Vikurvanad Abhun Nabha Tashamatra Guna Sabdo Lingam Yadastri Drishyayo
Tamasad Api Bhutadir Vikurvanad Abhun Nabha Tasya Matra Guna Shabdo Lingam Yad Drashti Drishyayo
Lingam Yadasyayo
Tamasadapi bhutade
Amasarapi Bhutade
Vikurvanadabuddhavaha
Bhikkhuvānāravirukkha
Tasya matra gunashabdo
Tasya matra gunashabdo
Lingam yadasudrishyayoho
Lingam Yadasyayo
Tamasarapi bhutade
Amasarapi Bhutade
Vikurvanad abhunabha
Bhikkhuvānāravirukkha
Tasya matra gunasabdo
Tashamatra gunasabdo
Lingam yadrisyayo
Lingam Yadasyayo Tamasarapi Bhutade Vikurvanāravirukkha Tashamatra gunasabdo Lingam Yadasyayo.
Tamasada vibhutade
Tamasarapi Bhutade
Vikurvanadabuddhavaha
Vikurvanāravirukkha
Tasya matra gunashabdo
Tasya matra gunasabdo
Lingam yadasudrishyayo
Lingam Yadasyayo
Tamasadapi bhutade
Tamasarapi Bhutade Tasya mantra gunashabdo Lingam Yadasyayo.
The word meanings. Tamasat,
Tamasat,
from the darkness of false ego.
from the darkness of false ego.
Api,
Ahi,
certainly.
certainly.
Bhuta adehe,
Bhuta Adi,
of the material elements.
of the material elements.
Vikurvanat,
Vikurvanat,
because of transformation.
because of transformation.
Abhut,
Abhut,
generated.
generated.
Nabha,
Nava,
the sky.
the sky.
Tasya,
Asha,
its. Matra,
Matra,
subtle form.
subtle form.
Gunaha,
Gunaha,
quality.
quality.
Shabdaha,
Shabdaha,
sound.
sound.
Lingam,
Lingam,
characteristics.
characteristics.
Yat,
Yat,
as its.
as its.
Drashti, the
Drashti,
seer.
the seer.
Drishyayoho,
Drishyayo,
of what is seen.
of what is seen.
So translation and proof by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
From the darkness of false ego, the first of the five elements, namely the sky, is generated. Its subtle form is the quality of sound, exactly as the seer is in relationship with the seen. From the darkness of false ego,
From the darkness of false ego,
the first of the five elements,
the first of the five elements,
namely the sky,
namely the sky,
is generated.
is generated.
Its subtle form is the quality of sound,
Its subtle form is the quality of sound,
exactly as the seer is
exactly as the seer is
in relationship with the seen.
in relationship with the seen.
The five elements, namely sky, air, fire, water, and earth, are all but different qualities of the darkness of false ego. This means that the false ego, in the sum total form of Mahatattva, is generated from the marginal potency of the Lord. And due to this false ego of lording it over the material creation, ingredients are generated for the false enjoyment of the living being. The living being is practically the dominating factor over the material elements as the enjoyer, although the background is the Supreme Lord. Factually, Satan except the Lord, no one can be called the enjoyer, but the living entity falsely desires to become the enjoyer. This is the origin of false ego. When the bewildered living being desires this, The shadow elements are generated by the will of the Lord, and the living entities are allowed to run after them as after a phantasmagoria. It is said that first the tanmatra sound is created and then the sky. And in this verse it is confirmed that actually it is so, that sound is the subtle form of the sky, and the distinction is like that between the seer and the seen. The sound is representation of the actual object, is the representation of the actual object. As the sound produced speaking of the object gives an idea of the description of the object. Therefore, sound is the subtle characteristic of the object. Similarly, sound representation of the Lord, in terms of its characteristics, is the complete form of the Lord, as was seen by Vasudeva Maharaj Dasharat, the fathers of Lord Krishna and Lord Rama. The sound representation of the Lord is not different from the Lord himself, because the Lord and his representation in sound are absolute knowledge. Lord Chaitanya has instructed us that in the holy name of the Lord, as sound representation of the Lord, all the potencies of the Lord are invested. Thus one can immediately enjoy the association of the Lord by the pure vibration of the sound representation of his holy name. And the concept of the Lord is immediately manifested before the pure devotee. A pure devotee, therefore, is not aloof from the Lord even for a moment. The holy name of the Lord, as recommended in the Shastras, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, may therefore be constantly chanted by the devotee, aspiring to be constantly in touch with the Supreme Lord. One who is thus able to associate with the Lord is sure to be delivered from the darkness of the created world, which is a product of false ego, tamasi ma jyotirgama. Tamasi, I looked that up, and apparently it just says tamasi is the darkness and jyotir is the light, so you should go to the light of the spiritual world, I guess. So, Om Jnana Tirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So these are difficult verses because they're some sort of abstract and it's hard to understand, but I read it over and over a bunch of times and looked up some related ideas. So, let's see where I started. For one thing, this is the beginning of the series of verses that explain the creation, how one element was created from another and from another like that. Each element is on down the line, all the elements were created one from another. And, sorry, I was okay and I wasn't even giving class. So, I'll do my best. So the qualities are all the different qualities of the darkness of false ego. Now there seems to be some crisscrossing of ideas here that was giving me a problem. The false ego, these 5 elements are just different qualities of the darkness of false ego. These are material elements. And false ego is in the Bhagavad Gita listed as one of the 3 subtle elements that are material elements. And also, but elsewhere it says, what does it say? This means that, okay, the 5 elements, namely sky, air, fire, water, and earth, are all but different qualities of the darkness of false ego. Somehow, he says, this means that the false ego, in a sum total form of Mahatattva, is generated from the marginal potency of the Lord. Now, we are the marginal potency of the Lord. And I don't understand why he's saying that, but I do know that there is no meaning to false ego without the living entity. It's a meaningless element unless the living entity is identifying with this false ego.
Can you repeat it again, please? Can you repeat the line again?
Yeah. It seems to be a contradiction here, so I'm trying to sew how it ties together, I hope. The 5 elements, namely sky, air, fire, water, and earth, are all the different qualities of the darkness of false ego. Because, of course, when false ego is created, then the other elements are created from it. This means that the false ego in the sum total form of Mahatattva is generated from the marginal potency of the Lord. And due to this false ego of lording it over the material creation, ingredients are generated for the false enjoyment of the living being. It seems like a crisscross of ideas, because I want everything to be all lined up and straight and easy to understand. But there is no meaning, as I just said, to false ego, unless there is a living entity to identify with it. Otherwise it has no meaning. Because the lower energy is not conscious. So here's another point that was interesting that I was sorting out in my mind a few verses back. See, I think I can just page over to them. To 11. No, this is 10. I wonder. Okay, Lord Brahma says, I create after the Lord's creation by his personal effulgence, known as the Brahma-jyoti. Just as when the sun manifests as fire, the moon and firmaments, the influential planets, and the twinkling stars also manifest their brightness. So, I remember when I don't know if I gave this particular test, but it seemed like I was impressed that everything comes from the Brahma-jyoti. Okay, the Brahma-jyoti is the energy of the Lord, I guess, like the impersonal form of the Lord. It has no consciousness in its own right. It's impersonal. And everything is the source of, essentially the Brahma-jyoti is everything outside the forms of the Lord. And in one corner of the Brahma-jyoti, we have the material world in the shadow of Maya, false ego, like that. So I was thinking, does that mean that originally souls are the Brahma-jyoti? And no, it got clarified in my mind that souls, jiva tattva, are Vishnu tattva expansions, only very limited. We are not expansions, we are not coming out of the Brahma-jyoti. That just isn't our origin. We're Vishnu tattva expansions. He's a person, we're persons. But we are different kind of expansion. Just like, well, Shiva is a Vishnu tattva expansion, but he's a different kind of expansion. So also, jivas they're not interconnected, that they can be one whole God, like all the Vishnu tattva expansions are one. And even though they can talk to each other for pastime, they're one. And we are two, or one and two, inconceivably, simultaneously different. And we're also very tiny and limited. So in that way, Jiva Tattva is different from Vishnu Tattva, but we are Vishnu Tattva expansions. Everything else is from the Brahma-jyoti. I think I'm getting this sorted out. Somebody tell me if I got this wrong, but I think I'm getting it right now.
One and different, right?
One and different. Well, the Brahma-jyoti is the impersonal, has no consciousness in its own right. And which verse did it say? I'm going to catch that. I read that Brahma-jyoti is, I don't think it was in today's verse. The Brahma-jyoti is is dependent on Krishna. And the Brahma-jyoti, people who want to merge with the Brahma-jyoti are wanting to merge with something impersonal. In other words, it has no consciousness of its own right. It comes from Krishna. So everything is created from that, according to Lord Brahma. So the Brahma-jyoti becomes the material energy by being covered by this Maya. And then Ahankar, false ego, and the modes, it turns into Pradhana. But they're both impersonal. So,
Well, you said that
Brahma-jyoti and Mahatattva.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, but you said the Brahma-jyoti becomes material?
Lord Brahma said that everything that comes from the Brahma-jyoti. So everything that's created comes from the Brahma-jyoti. And when you think about it, what else could it come from? Because it's there like a pocket of... Brahma-jyoti is everywhere, but it's covered over by a cloud. It's made dark. And so the light only comes through like the sun, like that. And,
well, it's like the spirit soul doesn't become material. It's covered by material.
No.
So the Brahma-jyoti, it doesn't become material. It's just covered by the Mahatattva after the Lord glances over the unmanifested material energy.
I know, but the unmanifested material, and this is what Lord Brahma said, which surprised me. A few verses back in text 11, he said, I create after the Lord's creation by his personal effulgence, known as the Brahmajyoti. Just as when the sun manifests its fire, the moon, the firmament, the influential planets, and the twinkling stars also manifest their brightness. Well, here's a Samhita, verse 540. I serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental bodily effulgence, known as a Brahmajyoti, which is unlimited, unfathomed, and all-pervasive, is the cause of the creation of unlimited numbers of planets, etc., with the varieties and climates and specific conditions of life. So it can't get around it says that. So somehow it's not all the unconscious matter is basically energy. The scientists are discovering this too, that matter is actually energy. And so there is the Brahmajyoti, and there is a cloud of Maya, covers it and changes it into, various classes have said this, but it's kind of difficult because we have these cut and dried ideas, and then we come to these verses and, oh, it's deeper. So, anyway, that's what I'm working through. Let me see. So the false ego is generated from the marginal potency of the Lord now. However, the marginal potency of the Lord is the Jiva Tattva. We're not located in the marginal potency. We are the marginal potency. And to say that false ego is generated from us it's not made of Jiva energy. It's made of material energy. So why does he say that? The only thing we can say here is the ingredients are generated for the false enjoyment of the living being. So further it says, factually, saving except the Lord, no one can be called the enjoyer, but the living entity falsely desires to become the enjoyer. This is the origin of false ego. When the bewildered living entity desires this, the shadow elements are generated by the will of the Lord, and the living entities are allowed to run after them as a phantasmagoria. So what we're dealing with is Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. It's inconceivably simultaneously one and different. So we're analyzing it in different ways slightly different from how we usually think about it. And so we're running into this, wow, how could it be both? Well, this is inconceivably simultaneously one and different. It's the only thing that explains this, and Lord Chaitanya gave us this final philosophy to explain, ultimately. So otherwise we have to argue, okay, the living entity, Vishnu or not, is the false egos that come from the living entity, or does it come from the Brahmajyoti, or they come from the Ahankara, the Pradhana, Mahatattva, like that. So we have to argue these things, but actually they're one whole truth that is Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, and Prabhupada is explaining it in different ways. As he understands what he's saying, I have trouble understanding it. But the more I read it, the more it sorts itself out that way. So,
couldn't it be where it says, the line you said was, it comes from the desires of the living entity.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole crux of the issue is the misuse of desire. Right. So when the living entity desires something separate from Krishna, that's when the false ego is created, thus
yes.
the material objects. Then, the marginal energy becomes identified with that and tries to exploit it for himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's all coming from desire.
That's it. But it comes from desire, but in a sense because of desire, because it comes from Krishna, and it's made of the lower energy, the Mahatattva energy, Prakriti.
Right. But it's the misuse of your free will.
Yeah. I'm not talking about the why, I'm talking about the how. You're talking about the why.
Well,
I think
maybe I wasn't understanding exactly what you're saying, but the why makes the how. Because you misuse, and then the how, he gives you this energy to play with.
Yeah. Yes. But it says here, let's see. let's see. This means the false ego in the sum total of Mahatattva is generated from the marginal potency of the Lord. It's not literally that souls are generating the material energy. I don't think. I mean, that would be new to me if that were true, because it seems like this exists anyway. The souls are separate. And the souls are put in different bodies made of material energy. It's not previous my always understanding. So this must mean because of the desire, because the Lord and the soul, the Jiva and the Vishnu tattvas are so close, although we can't know this right now, so close that by our desire, it causes it, because then Krishna makes it out of the lower energy. So this is the origin. Living entity falsely desires to become the enjoyer, and this is the origin of false ego. So it's together. It's together. When the bewildered living entity desires this, the shadow elements are generated by the will of the Lord, and the living entities are allowed to run after them as after a phantasmagoria. Like in Bhagavad Gita, we have the chapter 7, okay, 4 and 5. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Besides these, Almighty Arjuna, there's another superior energy of mine, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So we have, when you delve into it, you've come face to face with the Chintaveda Veda Tattva. And then you find out, you see it's true. You see it from a different angle, but it's true. So it is said that first the tanmatra sound is created and then the sky. And in this verse it is confirmed that actually it is so. But sound is the subtle form of the sky, and the distinction is like that between the seer and the seen. The sound is a representation of the actual object, as the sound produced speaking of the object gives an idea of the description of the object. So he doesn't lay out, he doesn't like make arrows, seer means this and seen means that. But when we see something, what we are seeing is something like the words, the sound vibration of it, because it comes through our senses and becomes certain things that are organized in our brain. So, but the seen, the object, is what it is. So it is, and then we see it, and it becomes translated like into what our senses make of it, which is something like what happens when you have sound vibration describing something, and you have the real thing. But this is, in a way, this is a comparison to help us understand that the holy names are non-different from the Lord, but also that the holy names being non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead takes it further. It's an absolute truth. Whereas in the material world, the sound vibrations might be different, and they don't actually make it come. Like you have you're in the desert, you want water. Okay, water conjures up in your mind. The whole idea of water, you remember what it tastes like, you remember how it works, how it splashes, and what it looks like. You remember everything about water when you say the word water, but the water's not there. You still don't have the water. So in the case of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, both things work. In the regular practical sense, if you say Krishna, then you remember everything you know about Krishna. And it's all there in your mind, you remember it. Just like if you say water, you remember everything you know about water. Only the thing is, it's absolute. So the name is the person, so then he's there in his name, and you feel the comfort, you feel the connection. And you don't feel so alone anymore when you chant the holy name. So it's different from water, although in our condition we can't literally see him, but he's there, he's present in the sound, and it's different. It's sort of like an already installed deity. The holy names are sort of like pre-installed deities. You know, you can have in the case of deities, you can have a statue of Krishna, and you can install it, and it's a deity. Okay, then you can feel the difference. I could feel the difference. I remember I attended a deity installation once, and maybe more than one. I remember at least one that I attended, some small Gaudiya deities, and I knew nothing. I was pretty new. I knew nothing about the ceremony. And there was a curtain, and they were behind the curtain doing stuff. I didn't know what they were doing. And then the curtain opened, and there were these deities that I had seen before, but they were like wearing gumshoes, and they're ready for their abhishek. And I thought the installation was about to happen. I mean, I didn't know what they were doing behind the curtain. But I was surprised at how the deities looked different to me. I was just entranced. They were so beautiful. It was like I could feel something new. I didn't know that was because they were already installed behind the curtain. So we can tell the difference between a statue and a deity that's installed. So the holy names are also the form of the Lord, but they're like pre-installed deities. So as soon as somebody says the holy name Krishna, you could feel something. Like when I first started chanting, I had been a Catholic for a few years. I had developed this meditation about the rosary where each phrase in the prayer that you say in the rosary, each phrase had biblical meanings, and I would go real slow and I would think of those meanings and make it a meditation. So when I learned about chanting Hare Krishna, I thought, well, I'll do that. Whatever I know about Krishna, I'll chant real slow and think about, and I make a meditation. And I found immediately that wasn't necessary. These holy names are so powerful, doesn't matter if I go fast or slow. I found that immediately. Just like those deities, I didn't know anything about installation, but I could tell the difference immediately. Same with the holy names. I didn't know much about the holy names. I just knew that you could chant Hare Krishna, and it was a good thing to do because Krishna is God, and so I learned that much. So I tried chanting Hare Krishna, and I tried applying meditations, and I found it didn't go fast or slow. It's still powerful. So I immediately could tell the difference. So that's why I'm saying that sort of like it's my analogy. So the holy names are like pre-installed deities. They are the form of Krishna, already installed. And so where is that coming from? So that makes it, that's absolute. When you say the holy names of the Lord, it becomes absolute. That holy names, it's not that you have a different language and different names and they're just as powerful. They're the real names, and they're really Krishna. They're really the form of Krishna in sound vibration. And they also work in the practical way, that they remind us of everything we know about Krishna. And so this will, as we make advancement, when we get to be pure devotees, because Prabhupada said that you can see Krishna always, so a pure devotee can see Krishna. So the closer you get to the higher you get, the more this blends, and the act of chanting the holy names and remembering everything about Krishna blends in with the absoluteness of the holy names being the form of Krishna, and it all becomes alive. And so that's what. So there's two levels when we're talking about sound. There's two levels of reality about the sound vibration. So, anyways, here we're talking about sound being the representative of the actual object. The sky is the actual object, and sound is the representation of the sky. This is. The rest of this is all about the holy names. Somewhere it said. Okay, second paragraph, top of it. It said that first mantra sound is created, and then the sky, and then this verse is confirmed that actually is so. But sound is the subtle form of the sky. And the distinction is like that between the seer and the seen. So it's really hard to untangle this analogy in my mind, but the sound is the subtle form of the sky. So it's a fact in creation that the sky is where the sound is. But sound is in all the other elements also, since all the other elements are in the sky. And there's something else here, let's see if I can find it. 28, trying to remember. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, so I can remember 2, 2, 2, 8. I didn't write it down, I memorized it. That way, I find it. Okay, Srila Sridhar Swami confirms that a part of the material nature, here I should read the verse first. After reaching Satyaloka, the devotee is specifically able to be incorporated fearlessly by the subtle body in an identity similar to that of the gross body, and one after another he gradually attains stages of existence, from earthly to watery, fiery, glowing, and airy, till he reaches the ethereal stage. So within the purport, third paragraph down, Sridhar Swami confirms that a part of the material nature, after being initiated by the Lord, is known as a Mahatattva. A part of the material nature. So you have the material nature, which would be the pradhana. It's initiated by the Lord, woke up a little bit, is known as the Mahatattva. A fractional portion of the Mahatattva is called the false ego. A portion of the ego is the vibration of sound, and a portion of sound is atmospheric air. A portion of airy atmosphere is turned into forms, and the forms constitute the power of electricity or heat. Heat produces the smell of the aroma of the earth, and gross earth is produced by such aroma. And all of these combined together constitute the cosmic phenomenon. So the sound is only the beginning. Everything comes, and it's going to tell in coming verses, successively the elements are made from previous elements. And so, and you get down to the earth contains all of it. Sound can go through, I guess, we go through a rock by vibrations. I don't know, our ears may not be able to pick it up, but it can go through its vibrations. And sound goes through the ether. I don't know if our ears can pick it up or not. Ether is basically space, and it's the region where sound happens. It's like in the Bible it says in the beginning there was the Word. So I guess they say that was Jesus and all that, but at the same time the word indicates sound. So first you have sound, and then it grows from there. So within air, there's sound passes through air too. That may be why we think that in space there will be no sound, because our ears pick up the sound when it's in air. I don't know if it can pick up in space. But it's very interesting and fascinating, and the essential point about creation here is that subtle comes first and then gross. And the subtle is in the mind of the Lord, and because of the desire of the devotee. And the Lord also accepts these desires of the not the devotee, the rebellious souls. Well, the Lord accepts the desires of the rebellious soul, so he desires material senses, material elements. So then they become existent in the subtle form, and then they're created in the gross form. And the Lord Brahma is the one who organizes then the gross matter into these forms. But they first are created in the subtle form, without which the gross forms cannot be created at all. So it's a very complicated thing we're learning here about creation. And anyway, Prabhupada brings it back to, we were talking about the sound of the holy names. So maybe I will just read the last part of the paragraph, which is all just about the holy names. The sound representation of the Lord is not different from the Lord himself, because the Lord and his representation in sound are absolute knowledge. Lord Chaitanya has instructed us that in the holy name of the Lord, as sound representation of the Lord, all the potencies of the Lord are invested. This is stated in the second verse of the Shikshastika prayer. It's getting to be 8:30. Because it starts later. Second verse of the Shikshastika prayer, where Lord Chaitanya is lamenting that he has no desire for the holy names, and he's talking about the holy names. There's so many holy names, and they're invested with all the potencies of the Lord. They're so easy to chant. There's no rules, and still I don't have any attachment. So it's in that verse, and the potencies are all in the holy name. And the potencies of the Lord are invested. Thus one can immediately enjoy the association of the Lord by the pure vibration of sound representation of his holy name. And the concept of the Lord is immediately manifested before the pure devotee. A pure devotee, therefore, is not aloof from the Lord even for a moment. The holy name of the Lord is recommended in the Shastras. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. May therefore be constantly chanted by the devotee, aspiring to be constantly in touch with the Supreme Lord. One who is thus able to associate with the Lord is sure to be delivered from the darkness of the created world, which is a product of false ego. Tamasi ma jyotir gama. So we can immediately and any time and always chant the holy names. My problem is I have no attachment to doing that, so I forget. But it's so easy, and he's always available. So I'll stop now. Any more comments or questions?
It was nice the last that you read because that was the application.
Yeah.
You know, like some of this is like, I'm glad you don't have to understand that to go back home, you know?
Yeah.
But that was the application, so that was how Prabhupada so expertly read.
Yeah. He brought it right back to the application. But there's a reason why it's in the book. We're supposed to try to understand it. Eventually, if you think about it, ponder it, read it, again, it will sort itself out in your mind because Krishna will, in your heart, will shine the light of knowledge and the darkness of ignorance and turn ignorance into knowledge. So these things that seem so abstract and so way over our heads are simply knowledge of matter and spirit and who we are as spirit. It just helps us understand how this material world came about. Even Parikshit Maharaj did ask. He also asked Shukadeva Goswami about the created universe, not because he was attached to it, but because he wanted to see what Krishna did, and it helps everyone understand the difference between Krishna and nature, like that which we all have to constantly work on. So it's good to try to understand it, but then Prabhupada always brings it to the application, just like you said. And you chant like that, then this whole thing, light will shine eventually in this whole thing. This whole meaning. Did Krishna or what? Yes.
When you were talking about the holy name, what came to my mind was that when we went out on Harinam one time, and there was this nice young man, he would give me fruit all the time to give talk to Shri Radharani. And he had the exact kind of understanding that he was so happy that we were there because by doing the chanting, around the Jackson Square or the French Quarter, he was saying, "Oh, you're spiritualizing the whole atmosphere." So
yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the only other thing I was going to say is when you were talking about the deity installation, I was in Alachua for the installation of Radha Shyam Sundar. And I had that experience also that Radha looked different, but during the Abhishek, she had one look that was more like benign and, I don't know if I could say sweet, but when she was unveiled, when the curtains opened, and I wasn't the only person that had this experience, she looked so intense. Like, it was almost like, and now she seems to have softened, but like initially it was like, you better behave yourself. that was it, exactly.
Wow.
And everybody was even kind of like, taken aback. So it's just so amazing that how the deities are their persons, they're spiritual, transcendental persons, and how they can display different looks and moods and like that. So really astounding. Yeah. Even when the deities are installed, I didn't know this till we went to the installation of Panchatattva. There's one part of they can be installed so simply. Prabhupada said in Vrindavan, he had the devotees hire the Brahmins to go through the ritual because otherwise the people would doubt the authenticity of the Krishna Balaram temple. But he said actually it's the chanting of Hare Krishna that's installing the deities. But in Mayapur, they did a 3-day thing, like taking wands of kusha grass and touching the different sense organs and chanting mantras to invoke the senses and different amazing things. A lot of it you didn't see, it was behind closed doors. But one of the things that they did that I heard about later was that someone, it must have been sannyasis, would hold their hand on the heart of the deity and chant a mantra and ask Super Soul to come from their heart into the heart of the deity. Which I thought that is so amazing. That is just astounding. And then somebody might say Super Soul's in somebody's heart, isn't that contaminated? No, Super Soul's not contaminated, of course, But I just thought, and there's also a part, they did this in Alachua because Jagadaka Swami, he suggested it or said it was kind of a must. He'd been to so many deity installations that there has to be at least one person that makes a promise, a vow to the deity that, I or my representative will always care for you. You will always be here to see to your needs like that.
Somebody asked about it?
Yeah, somebody promises the deity.
I
will always care.
In
Someone will
a
always
particular
care.
installation or always?
No, always.
Really?
The deity being installed, that doesn't mean just for the moment. That means for...
Yeah, but there's been so much change of personnel over the years, all the temples.
No, but me or my,
Representative.
agent,
Yeah.
stand-in, substitute, but whatever. It's not that it falls just on that person, but someone takes the responsibility of making the promise that the deities will always be taken care of, and then, ideally would see to it that. And we know there's so many instances, even those Jagannath deities near Mayapur in Rajpur, they were just neglected for, I don't know, at least decades and decades. And then, I forget the whole story about how they were turned over to ISKCON because they just couldn't be taken care of. And isn't it, Claudia, do you know that one? Even the village there, like everybody died. Or maybe that's a different instance where, the deities were being so neglected that, it got to be like, okay, once a day, give them some boga and give a little wave, some incense. And then once a week, and then it got to where it just wasn't happening at all. And then, I don't know that it's actually there in Rajpur, but I know I've heard this story before, that then it just wasn't being done, and so then the people had to suffer, the reaction of being so negligent with the deity. So it's not a little thing.
There are the stories of the deities having to be buried to save them from
that's Vrindavan.
Muslims. And then they spoke to some devotee and they got dug up and installed again. So
and Madhavendra Puri's deity.
That's what I was thinking about.
That he found them, he took the villagers, and somehow it was revealed in a dream, I think, where the deity was, and so he took the villagers with their shovels and...
Actually, little boy Krishna came to him in a dream and said, come here, and he showed him where in the jungle.
And then they should bathe him with so many... was he hot then? I forget.
Yes, and then he had to go get sandalwood pulp for him, and then he couldn't transport it so far, so he said, well, if you give it to this other deity, it'll be the same.
Exactly.
So
amazing.
Yeah. It's all so amazing.
We're so fortunate. How can we be privy even to all this, People are walking around in a daze, thinking that sense gratification is the only goal, and Prabhupada came and gave us such a gift, It's like, beyond, invaluable, beyond in the estimation of value.
Yes. Thank you. Anybody else?
About the sound Shabda Brahma, actually the sound is not different from God, like Om.
Shabda Brahma.
Shabda Brahma. That's the sound of God. That's what Prabhupada wants us to listen when we chant the holy name. It's not just chanting. If you just chant and you don't listen, you don't get anywhere. By listening to the sound of the holy name, then you get pulled up. But if you just chant without listening, it's the same thing. And after a while, you start listening. When self-realized soul, let's say the gopi here at midnight, Krishna's flute. It's for all self-realized person. They start hearing the henkel bell and the flute, and then they go up. It's a stage of self-realization. That's what it says. Sound is the first, because it's past the ether. It's in Akasha, you say, the air, the space, and it's even beyond the space.
Oh yeah, because these are just levels of material.
Yeah.
Realization, levels of material.
But there's the outer sound and there's inner sound. By listening the outer sound of the holy name, by listening, not just chanting, by listening, as we chant, we start hearing the inner sound. That's the gopis ankle bell and Krishna's flute, and they go up,
Well, that's probably a long ways away from me.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm just saying, I'm not in that level, but I was reading in the Vedas. That's what.
So we also know that Prabhupada said that certain point, probably when we get past Nishta and up into the three higher ones, some resident of Vrindavan will come to us and guide us. So.
No, I'm just, I don't say here Krishna flute. I don't, I'm just saying, I mean, I just call it.
Eventually,
we may not all make it to that, but as far as we go, like depending on Krishna and being very sincere and dedicated, that the spiritual master, there's such a thing as Kripa Siddha. I was asking that Prabhu on Sunday, that, and then there's the pastime in Atlanta, how Prabhupada is going down the steps, you have to be 50% or 100% Krishna conscious, 80, I don't know what he
we
gets
will
down to.
all get that, because that's what it is in the spiritual world. If we go back to Godhead, we will get that. It's not like we're going to be ourselves, our still halfway fallen selves, and go there as ourselves. We will get that, but we can plateau, or we can go the other way for a while, or we can keep progressing. Might not get it in this lifetime, but we will get it.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah. But Rupa Goswami also says we can hope against hope.
Yes.
To get that causeless mercy to bring us to that platform of perfection. So that's what we got to do. Otherwise, how could you carry on? Thinking
Yeah. Well, it's all about how close we get to Krishna, and in a sense. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am the swift deliverer. And if you want to acknowledge, go to a spiritual master. So the spiritual master tells you how to go there. We have to follow. And Krishna is the deliverer. It depends how dedicated we are. The spiritual master gives knowledge, but the spiritual master's mercy is instructions, mostly.
But the spiritual master is also the manifestation of learning.
Yeah, so Krishna can give you mercy. But then if he gives you mercy, then you will get that thing. It's not that we aren't all going to get it. But we might not all get it in this lifetime. But that's the whole point of going back to Godhead. You become that pure. That's what it is up there. So at some point we do get that. And it's so near. Super Soul is right in our heart. And he's in every atom. And is a manifestation not different from Krishna. So near. It's only our false ego and our desires. So near. But and it's the natural thing. It's where we came from and what we will come back to. It's not we won't all get it. We won't all get it at the same time. But if we're going, unless we choose to plateau or stay here by making detours or something, or turning back, by making offenses or something, or reawakening desires and taking a much longer time, we will all get it. Because that's what it's like up there. There's that maybe we have too much identification with our current condition. And so we think, how can I go there? But our current condition is illusion. It's not our natural condition.
And there are the steps between Krishna Loka and here.
Yeah, it's possible to go to Vaikuntha. Prabhupada said someplace that the residents of Vaikuntha are not fully awakened. So everybody comes from Goloka Vrindavan, but the residents of Vaikuntha are not fully awakened. So at least got that far. And that's kind of a goal too. At least get that far, because then you can go where you want to go. Eventually you can go back. But we're taught to develop our attachment to Krishna. So we're taught to be aware, to desire Goloka Vrindavan. Yes.
I just wanted to say regarding Vaikuntha, that the Vaikuntha residents are not fully realized. I just listened to the lecture. I'm not sure who it was. Maybe he was saying that Jai and Vijay, when they came as Jagai and Madhai, and when Lord Chaitanya embraced one of them, I forgot who it was, so they got Krishna Prema. but still they returned to Vaikuntha as Janavijaya doorkeepers. So it's not like they were not. So they experienced Krishna Priyama, so they understood who Krishna and he is in Goloka, but they still were in Vaikuntha. And they came back to Vaikuntha, and he said that so because if they don't come back, then who will guard the gates of Vaikuntha? So I mean, probably there's some gradation still, and we can't extend it.
And also a soul can be in more than one place.
I'm sorry, what?
A soul can be in more than one place. It's mysterious. Not like anything like Krishna can be, but you can be in Krishna Lila and in Vaikuntha Lila too. Like Arjuna is also, I think he's Vishaka. How different is that? But I think I read that he's Vishaka. So he's Vishaka, he's Narayan Rishi, and he's Krishna's companion for pastimes. So many things. There's less limitation in the spiritual world.
Yeah. And I also heard about, I remember one day, I think you were giving class, and I asked like Dhruva's Maharaj's planet, like pole star, is Vaikuntha or not? And I think it was connected, it was the same question, you were making this point, like Vaikuntha members are not fully related. I was asking about Dhruva Maharaj. And I heard yesterday for some reason that, I'm not sure, I don't remember it in Srimad Bhagavatam, maybe I'm just not remembering, but they were saying that when Dhruva got benediction from Krishna, even though Dhruva was already, like he didn't want anything material, but Krishna still fulfilled his desire, giving him planet better than what Brahmas and everything. And I heard it was said that so Dhruva got this planet for like thousands and thousands of years, so he has to remain there, and this planet is not getting vanquished, but it's still material. And after his like this lifetime, so full opulence and wealth will be over, he'll come back to Krishna. So that's what was said, and I'm not sure if it's how it's backed up. I don't remember if it's Srimad Bhagavatam, but maybe
I think it is.
That is there?
I think so.
So he probably got really this, it's like benediction first, so he stayed, he'll stay on his pole star for like thousands of, like many lifetimes, and then he'll come back to Krishna, right?
I think so. I think so. Some things are hard to understand, but Dhruva had a huge material desire.
Yeah.
And he wanted a kingdom bigger than his grandfather's, who happened to be Lord Brahma. So he had a huge material desire, and he had a very fierce determination to meditate on the Lord to get it. And when he saw the Lord, he didn't want it anymore, but, the desire, Krishna knows that the desire is still lurking in the heart. It maybe got overridden by seeing Krishna, but perhaps it wasn't purified yet. Like Narada, when he was like 5 and his mother died, then he went off wandering in the woods and he meditated in the forest, and he was so advanced. And yet, when he was meditating, he saw Lord Vishnu, and he spoke to him. And then Lord Vishnu said, "I regret to tell you, this is the last time you'll see me in this life, because you still have some material desires." What was his desire? It was like enjoying the breeze in the forest, the more goodness feeling in the forest. So he still was enjoying that. So he wasn't pure yet. So there's so many individual purifications at all different forms and styles of purifications that go on, because so many forms and styles of material desires and impurities. So
this is like kind of very cool purification in the sense that he will not experience anything bad.
Yes.
He will accept of his understanding that he has to wait.
Yeah. A purification in itself when you have full spiritual understanding, So
sometimes the great soul, I'm not doubting what you're saying, but sometimes the great soul has already actually passed the test, but undergoes the test again to set an example for others.
True, it can happen too, yeah. So I can't make a judgment whether that's the case or not, in the individual, unless Prabhupada says it. I can't know for sure. We're allowed to ponder until we get our realizations. It's not that we're not supposed to do that. Philosophical speculation means you can think about how could it be so that Prabhupada said, that Krishna said. So you think about it, and while you're thinking about it, pondering it, studying it, The super soul is also helping and shining a light on it, so then it gradually becomes knowledge. Becomes realized knowledge. So we should expect to have realizations. We all have realizations. They just grow. We have sometimes beginning realizations or more advanced ones, but we're all getting realizations, or we wouldn't still be here. Because it's not just abstract to us, it's not just academic, we're really experiencing that it's true, and that's called a realization. If it was just academic, we'd all dry up and go away, look for sense gratification. Anything else? Okay. Thank you all. Glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, and thank you all for participating.